Welcome back to the Glacial Gold Hunter. Today we're going to be doing a different kind of prospecting, and we're going to be doing some metal detecting for copper. Copper like this. Now my uncle worked in gravel pits most of his life, and this is a piece of copper that went through the jaws of the crusher. It came from this very pit. Now when you look at it from the surface, it doesn't really look like much. You could easily walk over that and never know it was a piece of copper. So that's where the metal detector comes in. Now we all know the glaciers brought gold down from Canada, but they picked up pieces of copper and spread it around as well. Now here in northern Wisconsin, copper grew in the ground here. There's copper mines and copper prospects dotted all over northern Wisconsin, and it's the same formation that went all the way up into the Keweenaw Peninsula. There wasn't nearly as much copper here as in the UP, but there's still some pieces that the glaciers picked up, spread around, and they call that float copper. Now this gravel pit is just a pile of really gravelly glacial till, so it's possible that there's some extra pieces of float copper mixed in there. I've checked this pit for gold, I didn't find any gold, but let's try for copper. And this is what it'll sound like when I find something. This is a Garrett AT Max. It's my dad's. I barely know how to use it, but hopefully I know how to use it enough to find something. All right, let's get it ground balanced. Okay, now it's used to the ground I'm at, and I just start hunting.
The thing I have against the metal detectors is that when people walk around with them, they look a little on the dorky side.
At least it's working. So there seems to be a signal up in here. So let's dig it. Right there. Still there. There's a shooting range in the pit next door. Hope they don't shoot this way. Oh, look at there it is. It's a piece of an aluminum can or a steel can. What a letdown. First thing I found metal detecting, and it's a piece of junk. Now I gotta bring it home. At least I know the detector works. This rock kind of signals, but really weak. Maybe there's copper inside. I don't know why it only rings sometimes. It is basalt, and that's what the copper forms in. Could be a little piece of copper in that basalt. All right, I don't know what to make of that one. A little bit of a ring. Sometimes, but not others. What does that mean? Well, the guys shooting in the pit next door are kind of really irritating me, so I think I'm going to head over to my next spot, see if I can find anything there. So our next spot is a gravel quarry. Now, I've been to this quarry before. This is a quarry I got the assay material out of. We found some galena with some silver in it. That's a different video, you can check that out. But today I want to run the metal detector over this basalt to see if we can detect any copper, because I know they crush copper along with the basalt in this pit. And yes, I got a permission slip to be here. Now there's a signal in this rock. It doesn't look like much. Doesn't look like anything. But there could be copper within the rock. Let me make sure it is this rock first. But some of these rocks don't look like anything, and there certainly don't look like there's copper in there, but there can be. Now here's a piece of Michigan copper that a friend gave me, and if you look at the outside, it doesn't look like anything. You can see a little bit of the greenish hue, maybe a little bit of the copper, but it's not until you cut it open that you actually see what's inside. So this is a piece of basalt that would have flowed out during the mid-continental rift, and all the little bubbles left behind in the lava would have been what was filled with copper. Takes the right set of criteria, the right fractures and planes for water to move or fluids to move and deposit the copper. So it's certainly not everywhere amongst the basalt, but where you get those conditions met, you can get pieces like this. And in this pit is at least a small amount of those conditions being met. You don't find a lot of copper, certainly not economical, but there is copper like this here, so hopefully that rock has some. So if we're really lucky, we can find a piece like this. Let's keep looking. Now this is clearly a fault right here. You can see what they call slicken lines, and those are spots where where the rock has gone past each other and it like gouges. It makes literal lines in the rock, so you can see the orientation of the movement. So clear slicken lines all the way through this fracture here. This could potentially be a conduit for those fluids to come up, and you can deposit copper around there. But I'm not detecting any copper. Nope, no copper. It's a small signal right here. Guess it's still there. I don't know, like 2 signals. Well, there's multiple signals. Oh, it's in my hand. No. Go half by half. Half at a time, and I can find it. No. No way. Well, this little piece is setting it off. Sure doesn't look like anything. This little tiny piece gives it a signal. I don't see any sign of copper in it. I have to take it home and file it later on. I thought there was another signal in here. There is. I got it out of the ground, and look at this. That looks like a significant piece of copper. Looks like it was maybe crushed by the jaws of the crusher. Have to bring it home and hit it with a file. It's a pretty good signal there. Looks like it's coming from this rock. Well, this rock is definitely setting it off. I don't see anything though, but we'll have to take that home. Maybe we need to crush it a bit. I don't see any copper. I don't see any copper, so I don't know why it's setting it off, but we'll take it home and we'll take a closer look. There is one little vein here that almost looks like a magnetite vein, little iron formation vein. Maybe that's what's setting it off, but we'll take it home and see. Well, there's an awful lot of signals to go through, so rather than bore you going through every one, I'll just collect a few and show you the goods later on. So I think I finally found something that's definitively native copper. You can see on this piece of basalt there's a really thin seam there, a little really thin vein, and there's some things sticking out of it. And when I push it, it's malleable metal. I can see a really faint green tint, that copper green to it, so I think it's just some dirty copper. So I'm gonna cut this open and see if we can see any of that copper shine. See all those broken up pieces of basalt, and it's all enclosed and all filled in with this calcite. So they call that a breccia. But there's nothing in it. There's some really visible slicken lines there. Looks like a little coating of hematite or magnetite on there. And that's just from the faulting. It just leaves those little striated lines on there. It came from up there, but I don't see a definitive fault anywhere. Clearly it's someone's fault though. So I got a small little bucket of samples here that go off when the detector hits it. Some of them have real trace amounts of malachite on there, which is a copper carbonate. Get enough malachite, you could use that as ore. But this is just a trace amount on the samples. But that is a sign that there's copper here. This piece has a real trace amount of azurite, which is, again, copper carbonate, but it has a higher amount of copper in there. Some of these really small samples don't look like anything at all, but they set the detector off. Kind of. So this gravel quarry is awesome, and there's a lot of interesting rocks exposed. And I think maybe we got some copper, but for now, I'm gonna leave this behind and we're gonna go to an actual copper mine and see what we can find. Now this is a real live copper mine, at least a tailings pile of one. Now I was here last winter looking for copper. I didn't find any then, but I was exploring the actual mine and the ice. You guys remember that? Well, this is their tailings dump. So I figure if I go over it with a metal detector, maybe I can find a scrap of copper left behind. I'll go in the mine a little bit later, but I think there's some other people exploring it right now. So for now, we'll stick on the tailings pile. Now these Wisconsin copper mines were nothing like the mines up in the UP, but they're still here and there. The UP would still be part of Wisconsin too if it wasn't for that dang Toledo War. Wisconsin wasn't even a part of that. We lost the whole UP. So here it looks like I finally dug up a signal. Not much, but there's something in that rock making it sing. Have a look at this little beauty. I've never seen a snake quite like it. Silvery gray on the black, yellow on the belly, and a little collar around the neck. Really cool.
I love my snakes, even though he wants to kill me.
So there's a little tiny signals all over. I don't know if I should try chasing these little ticks, like there's something there. Do I dig it? Maybe. I don't know. That's what that one sounds like if I put it on my tripod. That's what that sounds like. So it's a big difference, but I know there's something there. Well, there's something over there too. Everywhere I try to set this thing, there's something there. Listen to this one. That's a really strong signal, but I don't see any sign of copper. So we'll have to take that one home and take a closer look. So here is the actual mine. The last time I was here, it was all frozen in there. I could crawl around a little bit. So I don't think I'll be able to get too far, but we'll take a look. You see there's quite a drop off there. It just goes straight down into that shaft. There's not too much to see. A little dripping, some logs that people have thrown down here, some spray paint. Good grief, why do people do that? And then there's the exit. So I don't know if that was the original shaft or not, or just ventilation. Who knows? I don't know. See if the walls sing at all. Nothing. So I gotta wonder what the old timers saw that made it worthwhile for them to chisel by hand into all this rock. That's a big sound. Let me get my shovel and scoop that out a little bit. That's pretty loud. Probably just a beer can or something. Somebody's bobby pin, who knows? Yep, beer can. Well, I didn't have the best luck finding any big chunks of copper, but maybe there's a few little specks in those rocks I got. So let's take them home, clean them up, and see if there's anything shiny we can see. All right, so I got my rocks here. And like I said, I can't really see visible copper, but I'm gonna use this rock saw to cut them in half and see if that exposes anything shiny. The metal detector was picking up something, so there's gotta be something in there. Can we see it? Now basalt is fairly hard, but it's also kind of brittle and fragile because there's a lot of fractures that run through it. So hopefully I can cut through it without it just crumbling and breaking up. And you always wanna think safety when you're working with a saw. Wow. I did not expect that. It looks like a line of pure metal in there. Not copper. It's like silver, but it's metal. What the heck? That is so cool. I'm gonna have to do some research on that because I have no idea why that would form in basalt. I've never seen anything like that, but it was obviously clearly setting the metal detector off. Very cool. Now this one I actually think that might be native copper right there. Actually, before I cut it, I'm gonna hit this little edge with a file and just see if it shines up. That is copper. So I think it's hard for the camera lighting to pick up that is copper, but with my eye I can definitely tell that is a piece of native copper. So let's cut it through and see what it reveals. No freaking way. That's a whole clear line of copper. Clear as day, you can see that's copper. Look at that. Beautiful. That's so cool. So I finished cutting through all of them, and some of them have nothing, but some of them are cooler than I could have ever imagined. It's too many pieces to go over, but let me highlight a few. So see if indoor lighting does any better. So some of the samples are clearly copper. They're beautiful, even these little ones. You look at the outside edge and they don't look like much, but then you cut into them and there's clear, visible native copper. That's so cool. This is, I think, my favorite one. It's a vein, a small tiny vein of pure copper. Now some of the rocks that the metal detector picked up, you can't see anything visible, and when you cut into them, it's that silvery sulfide material again. That can't see any native copper, but the sulfide is metallic enough that it sets off the metal detector, which I didn't know that was possible, but there you go, now you know. Now this silvery sulfide, it still just trips me out. When I first cut into it, it was bright silver, but it tarnishes so quick. It's already tarnished, and it's kind of this rainbow color. That reminds me of like a mineral called boronite. It tarnishes to that rainbow color really quick, but I think it's a characteristic of some sulfides. Now back when we were at that mine and we had an assay of some of the silvery stuff, it was galena. So that's potentially what this is as well. But this piece that I cut into, it's that same sulfide material, but it's not a vein of it, and there's nothing else there. This particular sample, it has like this glob of the sulfides in there, almost like a porphyry, like it was trapped in the melt, which I've never known basalt to carry sulfide porphyries. And if that's the case, that's new to me. I mean, that's what it looks like, but I'm still not convinced. I'm not sure. I think it's so cool though. This piece that I found that I thought was copper, it is. And I started cutting it with that diamond saw, and I don't think that's the right saw. I think I need like an actual saw to cut it better, but it's clearly a big piece of copper. So that's super cool. And this is a little vein of that sulfide material, just kind of isolated and popped out on its own. It's got a lot of weight to it. This stuff is heavy, which galena being a lead sulfide, that would make sense. Lead with a little bit of silver and probably some other metallic components there, so it makes sense that it'd be heavy. But even some of these really tiny pieces had copper inside. So that metal detector is pretty sensitive. That's pretty cool. So all in all, I'd say we had a pretty successful day. I don't know that I'm going to make a habit of metal detecting, but it's kind of an interesting thing, and these pieces are definitely worth going after. I'm really happy with what I found. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thanks for coming along. Come on back for the next one. Bye-bye.